Now, cash reserves for your real estate investing is a very, very important thing. In fact, you must have this in your real estate investing business. If you don't have good cash reserves, you are potentially setting yourself up for some major problems. Now, as we're talking about investing in real estate, we know that we are going to have things that come up that are going to actually cost us money. If a roof goes out or a furnace or you have a water leak or something, you know you're going to have these expenses. What you want to do is you're going to be accounting for these way before they even come up. And that's the major goal about having a cash reserve. Hey guys, my name is Dustin Heiner with Master of Passive Income, and I want to show you how to quit that JOB, that just over broke job, by investing in real estate rental property so you never ever have to work a job again. And I'm continually making new videos showing you how to invest in rental properties and real estate. So make sure you subscribe to this channel. I'm every single week I'm putting out 3 new episodes. So I want to continually give you great content. So make sure you subscribe and hit that like button. I really appreciate it. Let's talk about what is a cash reserve. Cash reserve is basically you setting aside money in cash or liquid. Basically, you can get to it within a couple hours to pay for expenses. Now, as we are buying our rental properties, what we do is we buy a rental property that makes us $250 or more in passive income. But what we also do is we account for future expenses. Now, a future expense, like I said, could be a roof that goes out, could be a furnace or something like that, that we know could eventually happen. We know that furnaces will eventually go out. We know that a roof will eventually have a leak, so we need to prepare for that in advance. See, now what you might do is think, well, let me just use my income that I make from the properties to pay for those expenses. That's not what we want to do. Now, I quit my job when I was 37 years old because I bought 30 plus properties and they were all rental properties making me money every single month, a minimum of $250 for every single property. But what I do is I feed my family from the profits that those properties make me. If I don't make money in passive income every single month, I can't feed my family. I can't put a roof over our head. I cannot make sure that we actually have beds to sleep in and cars and all that sort of stuff. That's how we make our money. I don't have a regular job. Now, what you might think is, let me just dip into my passive income. We don't want to do that. Now, what I teach at Master Passive Income is how to actually build the business first, and part of that is accounting for cash reserves. Now, you might be thinking, well, how do I actually get cash reserves? How do I make sure that I have enough cash reserves? Where do I keep the cash reserves and all that good stuff? I will definitely walk you through all that. Now, first, when you think about what is a cash reserve, number one, it's money set aside every single month that you put aside in a savings account or bank account earning you interest. And that's where I put all my money, where I'm actually making more money from the money that's just sitting there. But every single month, here's my big pro tip. I suggest, and I tell all my students to put aside 10% of the rents every single month for your capital expenses, which would be like a roof going out, a furnace, or something like that. On top of that, that 10% is also going towards any repairs. Let's say you have a toilet that's leaking and you got to replace a toilet. Well, that's just a regular repair. That's not necessarily a capital expense. A capital expense would be, it's roundabout way, an easy way of saying it's a big expense, like a roof, something that's attached. And anyways, long story short, you want to set aside 10% every single month for future expenses. Now, let me show you how that's going to work. You're going to have $1,000 in rent. Let's just say that as an example. You're going to set aside 10% of that, which would be $100. 10% of $1,000 is $100 a month. You account for that before you even buy the property, before you even make sure that you have passive income and all that sort of stuff. That's part of your expenses. Then you take that $100 and you put it into a savings account. I actually put and I actually have a link in the description. Go to CIT. Actually, it's masterpassiveincome.com/CIT. That's a bank that I literally keep my money in. They get as high as like 2.5% return on a savings account. Right now, I believe it's a little lower, but I think just 2 or 3 months ago, it was at like 2.5%. That's a lot of money that's being saved. So what I do is I take 10% every single month from a property that my very first property I bought, take 10% aside, set that aside. Now, you might be thinking, well, how much should I actually have for the cash reserves per property? Like my very first property How much should I have to be safe? My suggestion, what I teach all my students, is you should have 1 month's rent at minimum, or work your way to 1 month's rent. Now, when you buy the property, you're going to do a little bit of rehab. You're going to fix it up. You're hopefully going to have a lot of things buttoned up. Like, you're not going to have big expenses right away. At least we hope. Now, what we're doing is every single month, we're taking away 10% aside, putting that in a savings account. And if you're renting the property for $1,000 a month, you want to get to $1,000. Well, just after 10 months, you have $1,000. 10 times 100 is $1,000. You have 1 month saved up for a problem, for the roof going out or something like that, or you need to patch something or replace your furnace or your water heater. Well, that's $1,000 saved up in 10 months. So that's the minimum. I want you to get to that. What I personally think and what I teach is that you want to have a maximum of 2 months. Well, you can obviously you can always have more. We'll get to that in just a minute. But what I personally say, with your first, second, third property, you want to have a maximum, or shoot to get to. That's not a maximum. Shoot to get to 2 times the amount of rent that you bring in. So if you have one property and that's renting for $1,000, the minimum is $1,000. You want to at least get to $2,000. That's like where you want to get to, where you feel like you have a good reign on everything. Because remember, you are still making $250 on every single property in passive income every single month. That's $3,000 a year. So just imagine this. If, worst case scenario, you have a roof go out, it's going to cost $3,000, maybe $4,000 to fix. You have $3,000 in passive income. That goes to feed your family, which is great. But if you have an even bad time and you have to dip into that, that's $3,000. But if you have the property for an entire year, you saved up another $1,200 for your expenses. That's $4,200 for a problem on a property. You're padding yourself so much. And that's a big pro tip is, with this, we're going to be padding our expenses. We're going to be padding and basically insuring ourselves for future expenses. So let me give you an example of how this might actually play out. Now, I have a rental property, and you see these pictures right here? These pictures are from a roof on one of my properties. Now, as you can see, the chimney has a little bit of a crack around it. There's a little bit of an issue in the actual, wood itself, as well as the bricks. And as I was looking at these pictures before everything was already torn apart, I didn't know what the extent of the damage was. I was hoping they'd be able to pull off a couple pieces of the bricks and fix that and maybe patch the roof, maybe be $200 or $300, maybe $400 or $500 at the most. Well, it turns out there was more damage than I thought. Now, what I did was, as they were going through it, they called me on the phone and said, "Hey, Mr. Dustin, there's more problems here. This is what we're really going to have to do." It turns out, and as you can see these pictures, there was actually a hole inside of the roof. You can see this one. There's literally a hole. They're actually having to fix that as well, which I'm glad we're fixing this. Like, I'm not upset about paying the money because it needs to be fixed, but I thought it was going to be $200 or $300. Then it was going to be $1,700. Then after all of this, I found out that there was even more extensive damage. It cost me a total of $4,000 for this entire roof because I had to replace the entire roof. There was already 3 layers of shingles on it. The roof, the wood behind it was actually soggy, or not soggy, but like breaking apart. It was old. So this was a $4,000 hit in 1 month. My goodness. Now, this doesn't happen to I have 30 plus properties. This has really only happened one time. I'm literally telling you about this one time. So don't let this scare you away from real estate. But what happened was I actually saved money. I made sure that I had enough money. And so I wouldn't say I think I owned this for like 5 years. I want to say I had at least $5,000 saved up for my expenses. Well, this took the reserves and it paid with my reserves. Now, the great thing about real estate is you're not going to have every single roof go out all at once, or every single water heater go out at once, which I'll get into in just a second. How much should you have if you have multiple properties? Now, if you have one property, my suggestion is to get to 2 times the amount of that one property's rent. If it's $1,000 a month, try to get to $2,000 saved up. Now, more is obviously better, but once you get to $2,000, you should be okay for a lot of problems that come up. And the biggest reason why we have this is so that the reserve account is that we do not have to go into debt, get a credit card debt, or pull equity out or something like that. We want to protect ourselves. It's basically any single business, they're going to have cash reserves to pay for expenses that come up. This is the same exact thing. We have our business. We want to make sure that that's taken care of. And let me explain to you other reasons why you may need a cash reserve account. Number one, you might need operating expenses. You may need to have money that flows in and out. You need to have money to make sure that you can run your business, that you're not going to go out of business. Because once you run out of cash, it's going to be very, very rough on you. Another one, like I just said, is emergency fund. If anything bad happens, you're able to pay for that. Also, another one, vacancies. When you are not having your property rented, you're not making money. You may have a mortgage that you need to pay. Well, that's going to be dipping into your reserve account as well. Now, not necessarily, I would not suggest doing that where you're dipping your reserve account and you have another account for other things. This is mainly for expenses, but you also may need to use that for your vacancies, which is a bummer, but you're going to have to do that as well. Also, random expenses that are just everyday expenses that could come up, like your toilet leaking, a faucet or something like that. We are saving for random expenses that are going to come up to repair the house. Also, if you have unexpected expenses, things that you never saw coming, like all of a sudden there were bees in the attic and you got to get rid of the bees, do a bee abatement and have the pest inspector come in and actually get rid of the bees. If you have to pay for that out of your pocket, then that's dipping into your passive income. We don't want that. This is going to be used for unexpected expenses as well as property upgrades. Property upgrades are going to be things like, let's say a screen on the window is damaged, you got to repair that. Or somebody breaks a window and you have to repair that. Something happens that is going to upgrade the house or fix something that's inside the house. And another great one is avoid borrowing money. Avoid paying interest. Avoid paying a bank any money because you already have your money saved up. A bank saved up money and you borrow from them, you're going to pay them interest. We want to use our own money that's set aside for this. And another great thing is you save this money. If you are smart and you put it in the CIT bank account like I have, remember, check in the description, masterpassiveincome.com/CIT. It'll let them know that you're connected with me and put it inside there and you're going to be having a great return on your money. It's not going to just be sitting in underneath your mattress and not making you money. It's actually going to be in a good bank account that's actually going to be making you money. So you want to make sure you put it in a place that's going to continually make you money and interest. Now, how do you manage your reserves if you have more than one property? Here is what I suggest and what I tell all my students and how I show them to build up their cash reserves to protect themselves. Now, once you get to 30 plus properties, you don't need, actually even before that, but you don't need 2 times every single property. Let's say you had 30 properties making you $1,000 a month. Well, that'd be $30,000 saved at 1 month of the total for all of them. That'd be $60,000 saved for all the properties as a cash reserve. My opinion, you do not need $60,000 for all 30 plus properties. Now catch this. This is pretty amazing. I have not written a check for any of my properties repairs or updates or rehabs or roof repairs. I have literally not written a check out of my cash reserves in literally like 8 years, 7 or 8 years. And the reason why is because I make so much money in passive income that if there's any expenses like a furnace goes out or water heater goes out or whatever, that money that I make from my properties in passive income, it goes and actually pays for those repairs. So I'm still making money in passive income, but all that money gets funneled and my property managers, all they do is they say, okay, you made profit here, you had an expense here, let's just bring this over here and it's taken care of. Now, I still have my cash reserves ready, but if you're getting up to 5 properties, if you have 1 to 5 properties, my suggestion, I tell all my students, you want to have 1 month's rent from 1 to 5 properties up to 2 months rent. So if you have 5 properties making $1,000 a month, I personally believe you should have $10,000. That's a good safe spot. 2 months rent at $1,000 for 5 properties is $10,000. Once you work your way up to $10,000, you're going to have a good buffer. Now, what's going to happen is as you spend that money, you're going to have $10,000. It's going to get spent a little bit, but then you replenish it. It builds back up. Then you spend a little bit, then it replenishes it and gets back up. So anytime it goes down, it dips, you want to replenish it by putting your money back into it and get that money. Now, here's a great thing. As you are actually building your business, you're saving that money, setting aside all those capital reserves. What is fantastic about the cash reserves is as soon as you have, let's say, $10,000 saved up, you don't need to keep putting money in there. You just pocket that money. That's now your money to invest in or buy something that you need to, whatever it might be. I personally suggest keep saving it to buy more properties, but you do not have to keep putting that $100 or that 10% aside every single month. Once you get to that certain dollar amount, just stop. And then that is money, just extra money in your pocket. Now, I don't even have a cash reserve amount pulling out. I don't have 10% because I already have plenty of money saved up for all my properties, but I do not need to account for that 10% every single month because I have so much money saved up. My properties pay for all the expenses and the repairs. I just am taken care of because all the passive income that comes in. Now, once you get one property, that's a certain amount. Once you get to 5 properties, I suggest, like I said again, 2 months for every single 2 months of the rent for every single property that you have. Now, once you get above that, then you have a full-fledged business. Once you get to 6 to 15 properties, this is a business. This is no longer like a side hobby. Once you have 6 units or more, it's a business. You need to view your business as a business. It's no longer just I have 1 or 2 properties. You have a business now. Now you're going to treat it like that. Once you have $10,000 saved up, in my opinion, as I've seen, if we're making $250 in passive income every single month, we have $10,000 saved up. That seems like it's a good amount of money for us in our business to weather many, many storms. Now, I would strongly suggest getting up to maybe $15,000 or $20,000. I would say, and this is for me, once I get above 15 units, once you have $20,000 and you're above 15 units, $20,000 is a great amount reserved or saved for a reserved cash amount. The reason why is because $20,000 goes a long way for every single property. And on top of that, not every single property is going to have its roof go out all at one time. Like not 5 properties having roof go out at one time. Now, if you did, that would be just horrible. I pray that doesn't happen to you. It's literally never happened to me. In fact, never happened to my students. I've never seen that. Most I've ever seen is 1 go out. So here's what I'm thinking. $20,000 is the max that I personally suggest and I actually hold on to as a cash reserves. Now, all that rest of the money that I'm saving continually, I actually use that and save that too, but I put that into more properties. That's the money that I save for investing in more properties. Now, I must talk about personal cash reserves. Personal cash reserves would be for you and your family. If you have a job, then, and you're investing, you have a job and you're investing, you're having money coming in both ways. You're from your job, your just over broke job, and from your investment properties, which is great. When you get to the point where you're going to quit your job, see, I quit my job at 37 years old, and I love not working for somebody else. I work for myself, but I also needed to have a reserve account, a personal reserve account, basically an emergency fund. Now, what I do is I coach people how to invest in real estate. And I want to show you exactly how to invest in real estate. I want you to get my free real estate investing course. Check in the description. If you go to masterpassiveincome.com/free course, all one word, free course, I will literally send you my free real estate investing course, teaching you all this, plus how to fund the properties, how to find the properties, how to find a good area of the country to invest, how to make it an automatic business, how to scale it to actually quit your job. I'll show you how to do all that, masterpassiveincome.com/free course. Now, as I'm showing you how to actually quit your job, once you're there, you realize I need an emergency fund for my life as well. That's a little bigger than the normal one if you have a just over broke job. And the reason why is because you're depending on that. And I actually hit it on first-hand basis. I actually got into a little bit of a pickle because I did not have a good amount of emergency funds saved up. And what happened was we had an expense in our real life and we had a bunch of expenses on our properties. I bought a bunch of properties that were rehabbing those. We had an eviction or 2 or something like that. And so a lot of money was going out of our pocket in business and in real life. And if we did not have an emergency fund, we would have to dip into our credit cards or go into debt or sadly, have big issues if we weren't able to pay that. But because we had an emergency fund and cash reserves for the business as well as personal life, we were able to pay everything and be totally fine and then build back our cash reserves with every single month after that. Now, what I also do is I also coach people one-on-one. Like I literally show them how to build the business, how to find the right area to invest in, how to find the right properties, negotiate, all that sort of stuff, and how to make sure you're making $250 a month. But what I also do is I have an application process that they have to go through. One of the minimum criteria is they have to have an emergency fund. I will not take them on as a coaching student if they don't have an emergency fund because they should not start investing. In my opinion, you should have money for investing and money for your emergency fund for your family. Because if you can't pay your mortgage or your rent, that's finding a rental property is the least of your worries or the least things you should do. You need to take care of yourself first. So that's what we need to do is get an emergency fund for both our business and our life. And so as we're thinking about an emergency fund and cash reserves and making sure that we're protected for future expenses, what we want to do is we wanted to calculate our own risk tolerance as well. Now, I have a little bit more risk tolerance. Like I can tolerate risk a little more than most people. And if you're listening to this, more than likely you're similar, maybe not as much as me, but you are similar where you can tolerate risk. Now, if you can't tolerate risk, then you may need to have more of a security blanket or more cash reserves saved up or more of an emergency fund saved up. If you have a little more stronger of a risk tolerance, then you can probably play with that. Now, how much money you actually have in your cash reserve. Now, what I actually do is, and as I was growing my business, I would dip into my cash reserves heavily to buy that next property. I'm like, oh, it's a great deal. I'm finding so many great deals. Let's buy this property. It's going to make us money to make back up in the cash reserves. I was super blessed to not have any issues with my cash reserves all throughout. And the big thing was the reason why I had so much passive income coming in. Now, I still had my job. I still had my job, so I was feeding my family with that. So I could be a little more liberal or a little more aggressive in my investing, dipping in my cash reserves and utilizing my investment money to buy the next property. I kept building it up and then spending it, building up and then spending it, and I was still blessed throughout all that. Now, I absolutely want to get you investing in real estate rental properties. Text the word rental. RENTAL to 33777. Rental to 33777. I want to get you that. I will literally send you that free course myself, show you how to fund the properties, find properties, build the business, make sure you can quit your job, make it all automatic. I'll do that for you. So you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you guys next time.